Mhm.
So yeah, hi everyone. This is Finance Meets Real Estate. So we meet here every Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So this goes on YouTube as well. So it's going to be on YouTube, Finance Meets Real Estate there. So we have amazing guests here every week. So today I'm hosting Scott Edward. So he's a friend of mine. As you see, like also on the screen, so he's a real estate developer, investor. He's also a mentor, like real estate mentor, and he's got his own website. Make sure to check it out. He's got a great YouTube channel as well. So Scott Edward on YouTube. So he's done over 24 million of flips through his real estate investing career, and he's been working at full-time W2 job. He's investing in long-term rentals, short-term rentals, new development, different kinds of projects. And so he's going to talk about his experience and lessons he learned along the way from investing. And so his previous experience, so he's worked as a mortgage loan officer for a Fortune 500 company. He also, he resides in Scottsdale, Arizona. So he's going to tell us more about himself, like more personal things, I'm sure. But let's dive in right into the topic here today. So, the topic for today, flipping 23 million in real estate while working a full-time job. So, with that, I'm going to pass it on to you, Scott. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to speak up, or we're also going to relate those at the end. So, let's start.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for the intro, Stefan. So, hey guys, thanks everyone for joining. It's nice to see a lot of your faces on the screen, and thanks, Stefan, for hosting these meetings. I join as many of them as I can, and I really love, all the guests that he brings on. It's a lot of fun, and hopefully you guys have fun with this little presentation I put together here. And I made sure to leave plenty of time for questions at the end too. But first, a summary on me. Like Stefan said, most of my bread and butter has been house flipping. So I've been investing in real estate for about now going on 11 years. And most of that time was while I worked a full-time job. So I spent 15 years in corporate America. I just left my corporate job this past October, which was a really scary milestone for me. But I left my corporate job to pursue real estate full-time. I've done a ton of house flips, and that's still my bread and butter to this day. But along with house flips, I've had some experience with long-term rentals, short-term rentals, new development, commercial. We'll get into all that today.
Sir, I'm really sorry to interrupt you. When you say you did a lot of house flipping, what city state you are talking about, sir?
Scottsdale.
Oh, that's in
primarily.
Arizona, right?
Yes, different parts of Arizona. Yes.
You got it. Wonderful. Thank you.
No problem. So what I did today for the presentation is I put together a handful of slides that just kind of showcase some different projects that I've done, so I could tell you guys some stories and then probably stimulate some questions from you about my experience and what I've been up to out here in Arizona. Like Stefan said, I do some education stuff as well in addition to my real estate investing. So I actually recently put on a pretty big webinar. It was like 150 slides, but I condensed that down to like 20 slides for this presentation to keep it short and sweet and just focus on the stories to keep it kind of lighthearted and fun. And hopefully you guys will have fun hearing these stories and learn a little bit from them. And then, like I said, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have at the end. But moving along here. So this was the first real estate deal I ever did. So we're going back about 10, 11 years now. And this deal is really special to me because you can see just a small it's just a small ranch style home out here in Scottsdale that I bought for myself to live in. But I learned a lot from this house, and this house was a huge inspiration for me actually to get started investing in real estate. So first of all, what I learned from this house is that you can buy real estate for very little money down, especially if you're buying the house for yourself. And me as a first-time home buyer, I didn't have much money to my name. I bought this with an FHA loan. I was like maybe $9,000 out of pocket total. Second of all, I learned that you can do what they call as a house hack. I brought in some roommates to live in the other bedrooms with me, and they paid for my mortgage. So I lived in this house almost for free for the first couple of years. And so that was cool. But the inspiration that this house gave me was that this was actually a flipped house. So this home was bought by some Canadian investors. They bought it for about $100,000, and then they sold it to me for $180,000 a few months later. And when I moved in and I was sitting on my couch here and I was just thinking about, wow, these people, these Canadian investors did something really cool here. They not only provided me, a first-time home buyer, with a house and a place to live, which was really awesome, and I really appreciated, but they also cleaned up the neighborhood while they were at it. This house was really ugly before they did the remodel, so I thought it was nice that they were kind of cleaning up the community. And the icing on the cake is they made a nice profit while they were at it. I estimated they probably made 20 or 30,000 bucks on the deal. So when I moved into this house for myself, I realized that house flipping is something that I wanted to pursue a little bit more heavily. And so I started to kind of build out my business plan during the first few months of living here on how I would start flipping houses in my area and kind of achieve the same things that these Canadian investors were achieving. Another slide that I put up here, though, to demonstrate the money that was made from this house. So I ended up selling this house after living in it for about 5 years. I made about $130,000 tax-free. And I share this mainly to say, I know there's some other real estate gurus and people out there who say, oh, you shouldn't own the home that you live in. You should rent where you live and then invest elsewhere. And I personally think that that's baloney. I think that you should definitely own the home you live in. And this is why. I know over those 5 years, I would not have saved $130,000. And yes, I paid some towards repairs and maintenance of the house and some towards interest along the way. But to walk away with a tax-free sum of money like this was really an amazing feeling. And for very little work, I just kind of let appreciation happen. And I let the principal be paid down. And that was that. So that was the first deal I've ever done, which was my own primary residence. Then I graduated to my first house flip, which is this house you see here. And I listed on the left some of the things I learned from this flip. So this was a short sale deal. So this deal was brought to me by an agent. If you guys don't know what a short sale is, it's basically when a homeowner is in a position where they owe more money on their house than their house is actually worth. Then they work something out with the bank that makes it to where they don't get foreclosed on. They instead can sell their home through what's called a short sale. So I bought this from a distressed homeowner. This was a long time ago. You don't see many short sales anymore. And what I learned in the process here of doing my first house flip, first was the importance of building a nice, strong, solid team. So there's no way I could have done any of this myself. I brought on a general contractor. I brought on a small staging company. I brought on, obviously, a real estate agent to help me sell it, a landscaping crew, and just building out a team to help support me along the way while I worked a full-time job and remodeled this house was really instrumental for me because there was walls that needed to be moved around within this house. A lot of work that was way outside of my pay grade. You know, I don't want to say I'd never swung a hammer before, but I didn't have any construction experience, that's for sure. So first thing was the importance of team building. Second thing I learned from my first deal was how great it was to build my resume through doing a project. So doing this first deal was a challenge because it was hard to find a contractor who was willing to work with me when I didn't have any experience. And it was hard to find a lender who would give me money when I didn't have any experience. But once I had one deal under my belt, I kind of had that one deal on my resume, which was a great feeling. And it really helped me to do my next deal. The third thing I'm talking too fast, I'm out of breath. The third thing is design. I learned a lot about the design process here. I picked out all my own finishes. I was very neutral, you can see with my finish palette, everything's brown. Everything's just a different shade of brown in this house. And that was popular at the time, but in hindsight, I think it's kind of an ugly finish palette. And what I learned here was that I should hire a designer. I don't need to try to be a designer. I'm not one. I didn't go to school to learn how to design homes. And so I shouldn't try to design them myself. So nowadays I hire designers on all of my house flip projects. That cost me anywhere from $5,000 to $35,000 for designer's fees. But they, with their expert eye, my house flip projects nowadays are much more attractive. They sell for much more because they're not this conservative, neutral palette. I learned obviously about the sale process and how much real estate commissions cost at the end of the deal. That's quite a bit. That's a significant expense. And then other expenses associated with the sale. And then ultimately the profit on this deal, it was something like $40,000 worth of profit made on this deal. That's before taxes, of course. And so I learned a lot as to, the amount of hours and effort and energy required to generate a profit of that size. And I kind of liked where I was going with this. So that's the story on my first flip. Moving on to another project that didn't go according to plan, I say. So this was my first new development deal that I wanted to share because it's kind of a fascinating story of itself. So some of you guys might think this house looks weird, but my style has become more contemporary, more edgy for sure. And this house I built from the ground up, and I almost kind of single-handedly built it from the ground up, because what happened was I bought an old, ugly ranch style home out here in the Phoenix area. I tore it down and I went to go build this new house in its place. And in doing that, I built out a team of general contractor, architect, engineers, designers, everybody to help me execute this plan. But the most important part of my team, my general contractor, unfortunately, probably 3 months into the job, right around when we laid the foundation, he kind of fell off the face of the earth. I don't want to get into too much personal detail, but he unfortunately fell onto some hard times and he kind of abandoned me. And so where he left me with this project is a house that has been torn down with a foundation in its place, and a guy who worked a full-time job. How would I build this house from this point forward? So I scrambled. I found a friend whose father, who was a retired airline pilot, had experience with home building, but he's now a retired pilot, so he had some free time on his hands. I brought him on kind of as my project manager or superintendent, and he and I, from that point forward, finished this house. We framed, we subbed everything out, obviously, but from the framing to the installation, drywall, paint, all the finishes, the landscaping, we did everything from that point forward. He met with all the inspectors for me, and we got this house built and sold. It ended up being profitable in the end. Here's some shots of it in the inside. It was $72,000 profit on this deal. High ceilings in there, little wet bar off the living room, custom cabinetry in the kitchen, and same in the master bathroom. But the moral of this story, and the reason I share it, is that this is a deal that absolutely did not go according to plan. I was hit with a major roadblock very early on in the process, but I stuck to my plan. I built the house that I knew I had confidence in building, and it ultimately sold and made me some money in the end. And so it was all okay, but it was very scary in the moment, but I just had to kind of stay cool, calm, and collected and take the thing to the finish line. And ultimately it paid off. The AIRBNB, the short-term rental chapter of my life. So in 2017, I was kind of like, oh gosh, it's a lot of work flipping houses. I'm doing a lot of work for these small paydays, and then I'm taxed up the wazoo. So I want to try to start creating some passive income for myself. So I started buying some properties solely for the purpose of renting out on Airbnb in 2017. I picked up 3 in total, and I ran those as Airbnbs through 2020. And they did pretty well. Then the pandemic hit, and I already had some frustrations with the Airbnb business, but the pandemic was the icing on the cake. I was like, you know what? I got to tap out Airbnb. I saw my calendars wiped out when COVID hit, and I just was not interested in trying to weather that storm. So I sold 2 of the 3, and then I converted the last one into a long-term rental. But anyways, this was me kind of chasing the shiny object of Airbnb. And ultimately, these houses did well. They made about $65,000 per year each in gross income. But it was a very high maintenance, high expense business too. The property management fees were high. As a landlord of an Airbnb, you're paying all the utilities, cable, internet, landscape maintenance, pool maintenance, and so forth. So these homes were making me somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,000 per house per month. even though they were even though they were grossing $65,000 per year per house, they were only bringing in about $12,000 per year net per house. So obviously, and that was after paying a mortgage too. So they didn't end up being quite as profitable as I had originally anticipated. And so this kind of taught me a lot about chasing that shiny object. I learned a lot through this chapter of my life, and I may get back into the Airbnb business at some point. And if I do, I think I'd self-manage. But that was what happened through my Airbnb journey. And man, I've got some horror stories with these Airbnbs. I don't know if anyone cares to hear that, if we could get into that later, but that's just another factor, is like, there's so much wear and tear on these properties, the furniture, the neighbors get upset with you. There's a lot of dark sides to the Airbnb business that I think people don't talk about when they're trying to just sell you on starting an Airbnb business or buying an Airbnb. It's not all rosy. It is quite profitable, but it's definitely quite stressful as well, and high maintenance. Let's see, I think I got another just one or two stories to share with you for fun, and then we can get into some questions here. So this is my Mountainside Project. I used to ride a motorcycle. I wish I still did. I sold that thing. I kind of miss it. But so this was a deal that I bought that was by far the biggest deal I'd ever done. This was also back around 2018, 2019 or so. And what was unique about this project is that nobody in town wanted to touch this deal because it had everything wrong with it. It had termites, it had mold, it had squatters, septic issues. It was hillside. So a separate set of restrictions required by the city to build this place out. But I wanted to flip this house. I loved the location. I loved the lot. I loved the views. And so I bought it. I had to bring on a team of other investors. This was my first time raising a lot of money. It was about $2 million in total to pull this project off. So I had to bring on a total of 4 partners to do it. And ultimately, what I taught myself here is that if I put together the right business plan and I execute that plan, or put together the right business plan, make it attractive on paper, it's easy enough to get investors as long as all the numbers pencils out and the location and the comps make sense. And while I did have to end up splitting the profit 4 ways, in the end, this was the most profitable deal I'd ever done. And you can see that here. So this deal generated just over $400,000 in total profit. Like I said, I only got a quarter of that. So another mission of mine after this deal was, how the heck can I pull something like this off by myself and not have to take on a bunch of partners, because that would be life-changing money to make that all at once. But the house turned out awesome. I mean, you can see you got high ceilings in the entry, huge walls of glass, resort style backyard, vaulted ceilings, big kitchen. I mean, it had all the bells and whistles. People fell in love with this house, and I was really proud of the outcome. And I was also really thrilled to be able to give my investors such a great return on their money. And also, obviously, it ended up being pretty profitable for me as well. So scary one to take on in the beginning. It was a bold move of me to take on a project that had so much wrong with it in the beginning. But as they say, location, location, location. This place was sitting in basically the most premium spot in town that you could imagine. It was very central. It had great views. It was surrounded by multi-million-dollar homes. I knew that it would be a home run if I could just, polish it up and make it pretty. And so that was that one. I'm not sharing any of these stories to brag. Hopefully it doesn't come across that way. I'm just sharing them for fun, just to give you guys some context, because I think a lot of people don't get behind, don't show the behind the scenes of this stuff enough. So just trying to be transparent. One of the biggest things I've learned over doing all this, going back to that first house flip, the house that I painted yellow, if you didn't notice that, one of those shades of brown actually was more of a yellow, which is kind of gross, is bring on a designer. The designer will do stuff like this for you. This was one of the houses that I did in 2020, I think it was. You can see, just for some reference points, the sliding glass door on the left, and the sliding glass door in the same position. And then this door was replaced with a window. The kitchen was slightly reconfigured. This wall was taken down, but this kitchen on the right in the after photo might not be for everybody. It's very masculine or gothic, or, it's dark with all the dark tones, but this house is extremely unique for the neighborhood. It was something that everyone who walked through here was totally in love with, the fact that we pushed boundaries in terms of the design in ways that you don't even see in this photo. Just with the waterfall island, this kind of integrated into this massive granite, the pantry that's kind of hidden behind this black door. There's just a lot of different unique design elements about this house that not the everyday Home Depot house flippers are doing. And I can't take credit for how cool this house looks. It's just the fact that I hired a designer to help me kind of navigate this build. So that's my recommendation to any new house flipper. Spend the money on a designer, do a high quality magazine worthy design, and you will find a buyer. This house sold for over appraised value. The buyer came out of pocket the difference because he just had to have it. Excuse me. Here's another example of the results. So this is another house that I did. I think this one was also in 2020, I want to say. So this is the before and after the exterior. I'll show you the interior here in a second, but this is where I say cleaning up the neighborhood, something for me that I've really enjoyed about house flipping that some people might not look at it from this perspective. But when you're remodeling a house or when you're giving a house a facelift, you really are cleaning up the neighborhood in a big way. I mean, this one down here below is the before. It's not horrible, but it's very dated. It's very just kind of blah. This house at the top is the after. Hopefully everyone agrees. I think that we did a great job here with just a fresh coat of paint, a nice big splash of color there with that artificial turf and some plants, a little gradient color palette there on the eave or up by the eaves. It's, just when you look at the house as a whole, I think that it's much more aesthetically pleasing now than it was. And so, it gives the neighbors something nice to drive by every day once the house is finished. And then this is what the inside looked like. So you can see, again, for some reference points, down the hall here is that the door, that same door is down the hall here. And then the sliding glass door over here walked out into what was an enclosed patio. So I ripped that down, and now that sliding glass door just leads straight out into the backyard. But, again, just kind of rearranged the kitchen. Again, brought on a designer for this one. Just a fresh batch of finishes that, I don't know what the house flips in your area look like, but I mean, again, this isn't doing anything too much crazier than other house flippers in the area. It's just it's bringing in a designer to make sure that all the finishes are cohesive and they're unique and they're special, and pushing some boundaries in terms of the way you furnish the house. Or like this island's got kind of a curve in it and then a waterfall on this edge. The cabinetry is this kind of like olive green, which is a little bit of a bold statement with the cabinets, but subtle enough when you've got the brick and then the wood flooring. So it all ties together really nicely. Again, I couldn't have done that myself. I did that with the help of a designer, but really proud of the outcome. Moving on to just a few more slides before we wrap up this little deck thing. These are the common challenges that I hear the most that people have in regards to doing these deals. How do I find the deals? How do I raise capital or fund the deals? And then how do I find contractors to pull these things off? So I just want to quickly address those today. We're not going to tackle all of this in such a short meeting, but finding deals, this next slide is meant to be a little bit comedic, but where are the deals? They're right here. I've lost track of how many times I hear other gurus and people say, don't go on the MLS to find deals. There's no deals to be found on the MLS. I'm here to tell you, I've done anywhere an average of 1 to 3 deals per year for the past 11 years. And almost every deal I've done has been a property I bought off the MLS. I have bought some off wholesalers. There was 1 or 2 that I've done where I did direct mailers to homeowners and I bought the deals that way. But most of the deals I bought have been right off the MLS. I've come in with aggressive offers, or I've been maybe more creative than the prior buyer, the last person who's looked at the property. So there are absolutely opportunities on the MLS, especially now with inventory being up basically everywhere. So I just wanted to share that to encourage everybody to pay attention to the MLS. There's a lot of deals to be found out there. How do I fund the deals? This is, again, meant to be kind of funny, but just Google hard money lenders near me. There's likely a ton of hard money lenders around you. There's 15 here on the screen right now that you guys can see that are around me who would be willing to fund my deals. It is harder to use hard money in the beginning. It is expensive when you pay points and interest. They do require you to put some money down, but usually they'll fund most of the build out. But this is one way to fund your deals. And hard money lenders generally are underwriting the deals, not the borrower. So you can work with a hard money lender and have them give you money based on how great your deal is, not based on your own credit or how much money you make or anything like that. So that's that. Do the numbers work? You need some type of a tool or a spreadsheet to determine whether or not the numbers work. This is a spreadsheet that I use. I could send a link to this for you guys to download this thing for free if you want it, but it just kind of breaks down on the left what you buy the place for, what your expenses are, holding costs, taxes, insurance, utilities, commissions, staging, etc. It kind of breaks everything down and then spits out how much money you might make on that deal based on all those assumptions. In the beginning, it's harder to fill this out when you don't know how much the construction will cost, or you don't know what the holding costs will be. And you have a hard time running the ARV to determine the sales price on a property. But as you get more experienced, I can run numbers through this calculator in a matter of 2 or 3 minutes after looking at a deal. And it'll tell me whether or not the deal's profitable or worth it, me at least going to drive by and then potentially making an offer. I know Stefan has had this on his mind, so I wanted to mention, this is a goofy photo of me, by the way, because I'm a YouTuber. So I've got a million photos of myself making funny faces. So that's what that's all about. But anyways, the housing market is definitely changing. The market's cooling. The inventory is up. Interest rates are up. Inflation is through the roof. Interest rates are probably going to keep going up. We're in definitely a tough place in terms of the economy as a whole. And my take on all of this is that anyone who's investing in real estate right now really should just be treading lightly. Pay attention to these conditions, be really mindful of them. With interest rates being high, it's harder to do deals because if you are not funding them with cash, then you're going to need to cough up a ton of money in interest to fund the deals. If this pain continues, then in 6 or 12 months, whenever you go to sell a house, we can be in even worse shape than we are today and see an even further drop from where we are today. So it just means you need to buy at deeper discounts, buy in really good locations, do really high quality design like we talked about earlier, so that if you are trying to sell a house in a more soft, unstable market, that house will at least be special and it'll stand out and it'll be something that is unlike the other cookie cutter remodels that are out there on the market, kind of flooding inventory. So that's my 2 cents on the state of the housing market. I definitely don't have a crystal ball. No one does. There's a lot of people who act like they think they know what's going to happen out there. You watch all these news headlines about people who have these predictions and so forth, but no one knows for sure. And so I definitely have my guard up right now. I'm not aggressively pursuing deals really right now. I have 3 projects under my belt that I'm working on as we speak, and I'm not really looking at taking on any more unless just the deal of a lifetime hit my plate. Then I'd probably go after it, just because, again, I'm focused on very specific locations. Like for me out here, the locations that I'm investing in are locations that are very close to where I live, that I have a huge amount of conviction in, that I believe in for the short term and for the long term, that I've, in neighborhoods that I've either lived in myself or lived by. So they're areas that I know really well. I'm not the type who has any experience investing remote. It freaks me out. I'm not interested in investing in remote. I know there's a lot of people out there who have a lot of success with that, and I have tons of respect for those people, but it's not for me, unfortunately. I just don't have the stomach for it. I need to be able to touch and feel these properties, and especially in a market like this, you don't want to accidentally buy on the wrong side of the tracks or whatever. Last, I'll just share this story. The house, I'd say the house that changed my life. That's just kind of a funny tagline, but I wanted to share this story because this was one of those houses that we looked at before. I bought this house actually for my wife and I to live in. We bought this house within a few months of getting married. And then not long after that, we turned this house into one of those 3 Airbnbs for a few years, and that didn't work out. We converted it to a long-term rental. And then at the peak of the market, or pretty close to the peak, we ended up selling this property and we made a fortune on it. And this is another one that we didn't do anything to. We simply just bought it, lived in it for a while, rented it for a while, and sold it. And we didn't do any renovations to this house. we bought it and sold it in this weird blue color with a roof that was 1,000,000 years old and an AC unit that was about to die any day. And all we did was we bought a house at the right time in a really good location, and then we waited. And because the price of real estate, generally speaking, over a long enough span of time, especially in strong areas, has always gone up. That's why I'm such an advocate for just being in the market and buying homes in any market. In a market like this, like we just talked about, buy homes more carefully and be more particular in your criteria. But excuse me, if you're not investing at all, you're not going to afford yourself the opportunity to see massive appreciation like we saw with this home, which is partially being in the right place at the right time because we bought, at such a great timing and sold at such a great timing. But as they say, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And in other words, you kind of create your luck with the amount of work that you do and the amount of deals that you involve yourself in. So I just like to share that story, especially because this house, as you can see, is not all that impressive. You wouldn't think that this is my most profitable deal I've ever done, especially knowing I literally just bought and sold it exactly as it sits here today, or in this photo. But this is the most profitable deal I've ever done. And it was simply just because I bought a house for my wife and I to live in. So that's the end of my spiel. Hopefully you guys had fun with my ramble and some of those stories. And I'd love to hear, Stefan, if you have any questions for me or if anyone else does.
That was great. Very transparent and straightforward, right, Scott? That's really awesome. Do you guys have let's open up the floor for some questions if you guys want to ask.
I have some questions, but if someone wants to go first, happy to.
Go ahead. Sure. Mm-hmm.
The last one you said that was the maximum profit you had on that house. How much profit did you make on that house?
So that one was about 380,000 before taxes.
Okay.
I tried to 1031 those proceeds and do another deal. I couldn't find another deal in time.
380,000 on this house?
Yes.
How?
I just explained it. I was at the right place at the right time.
Wow.
I bought, again, I mean, if I am absolutely obsessed with the mantra location. And this house was sitting in the right city, in the right zip code, in the right neighborhood, on the right street, with the right sun exposure, sitting next to the right neighbors. Like I'm extremely particular about those things. And I feel like if you that's the reason I'm such a quote unquote like boutique house flipper. I'm not doing 100 flips a year. I'm not involved in tons of deals like some of these other gurus out there. And I'm not interested in ever being that way, because I think that if you're much more disciplined in picking good locations and doing good designs.
Quality over quantity.
Correct. Yes, that's correct.
I have another quick question. How do I find?
Yeah, go ahead.
How do I find foreclosed houses?
Well, I've never bought a foreclosed house, so I don't feel qualified
I'm in New York
to give.
market. I'm in New York market, and in this market, we get a lot of foreclosed houses.
So, I mean, I do know it's a matter of public record. When a borrower falls behind on their mortgage, and the lender files their notice of default, which is after usually like 3 or 4 months, then the foreclosure process starts. And so you can get access to that information. It is all a matter of public record, and the auction dates are usually posted. There's websites like, I think auction.com is one of them that makes that information available. But again, I've never bought a deal, a foreclosed deal. I did the short sale one I told you guys about earlier, but I can't answer on how to find foreclosures in New York. Sorry about that.
You got
Maybe
it. Maybe
Stefan knows. He's in New York, right?
Oh,
right. That's it.
Another question. What's the best way to get a nice real estate license? Because I know there are many areas, many websites. What would you recommend?
Well, I actually, right out of high school, I went to real estate school. There's a place out here called Arizona School of Business and Technology. And I went there to get my real estate license, but I had to flip it to inactive because I became a mortgage loan officer. It was a conflict of interest. Okay. So I do have experience getting my license. That was a place that was recommended to me by another real estate agent in town. And so that would be my recommendation to you, is to ask around, talk to other real estate agents and find out what schools they went to and whether or not they'd recommend them.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that.
Got
So
it.
let's
Thank you.
So another question we have on the chat from Ryan. So by pushing boundaries when it comes to designing houses, are you controlling the cost of the final price of the house?
So, I mean, I don't go completely rogue, you know, like if we go back to that house that we were where's the one with the black kitchen? Like that house, I knew this house cost me something like, I think it was 135,000 to remodel this house, inside and out, landscaping, the whole 9 yards. And I knew that whenever I was going to sell it, the neighborhood supported a sales price somewhere around 550 to 650 range, depending on the square footage, whether or not it had a pool, a garage, and so forth. So I'm kind of looking at the range of homes that are selling in the neighborhood to tell myself kind of where I think I can realistically land with my sales price. And the only reason this house I sold for 600,000 and it appraised for 580. I knew I could sell it for 600,000 because there's homes in this neighborhood that were selling for 850,000. Granted, they were much larger. They did have pools, but if someone's looking in this neighborhood and they don't want to spend 850,000, and they're okay with buying my house, which is significantly smaller and doesn't have a pool, but mine's only 600 and it's a really awesome design, then they may consider buying my house. And so the reason my house did not appraise is due to the square footage. I think it was like 1,400 square feet. So on a price per square foot basis, this home was not worth what I was asking for it. I do think that it's a bit irresponsible to follow that logic that I follow nowadays. I only do that because, again, I would consider myself to be very, very tuned into this market, what buyers are looking for in this exact sub-market, exactly how to push boundaries, what designers to hire who I know carry a really reputable name that local buyers respect. So there's a lot of nuances to how I decide to do what I do. Hopefully that answers your question. But in determining the after repair value of this house, I knew that it was in that 550 to 650 range. Ultimately, it landed at 580s on the appraisal. And I determined that based on just the sales of similar homes in the area whenever I was buying this one.
And so Ryan is also asking, actually, in terms of, so when you say raising capital, it's kind of like joint venture, the four partners project, for instance, that you mentioned. That's what you refer to, or is it like actual raising of like investors' money?
It was just a joint venture. You know, there was an attorney who drafted up the paperwork, but basically it was just 4 separate people who all dumped in, a percentage of capital, and then each one of them received a percentage of the profits whenever the deal was done. So I would say that, you know, from my perspective, it was a very informal deal. Like I didn't get into any fancy like joint venture syndication type language or anything. I just said, hey, attorney, I've got these 4 guys who want to go in on this project together, draft something up that says that we're all going to fund it this way and we're all going to cut up the profits this way when we're done. And then we had it drafted, we all signed, and we went to town.
So another question from Michelle is, so what has been a rough timeline from your purchase, getting your team together, and the flip sale? So 1 year or under a year?
So it depends on this house. This house was about 7 months. This house was a little bit more complicated. This one was about 9 months. This house was about a year and a half. So I think on average, and if we go back to my ugly yellow house, this house, I mean, I'd have to go back and look, but I think start to finish was like 3 months. And that was purchase to sale. We knocked the remodel out in like, I don't know, like 6 or 8 weeks or something. It was crazy fast, but that was a long time ago. And it was a smaller scope of work, very cosmetic. So it depends, but I would say right now in this market on smaller projects, I would account for probably 8 months on average to do a more just, standard kind of house flip like this or like this. And then if you were to do something a little bit bigger where you're adding square footage, it's planned for at least a year, if not longer, depending on how long it takes for your city to get their act together. For me, I'm waiting on permit. I just got a permit on a deal I'm doing in Phoenix, and I'm waiting on a permit on a deal I'm doing in Scottsdale. The Phoenix permit took about 3 months. After I came up with my drawings, engineering, and submitted, it was about 3 months from when I initially submitted until I had the permit in hand.
Mhm. And so another question, actually. So what do you think? I mean, I think you touched on that one, but is there a house market crash coming to your knowledge? Ryan is asking. Nobody knows.
That's a question for Stefan, not for me. As a house market crash, I'll tell you this, okay? So I'll go back to my goofy face slide. Out here in Scottsdale, the housing market has already crashed in my eyes, and it may continue to. But if you look at homes that were selling in the areas where I'm buying 6 to 8 months ago, similar homes are now selling for 20% less than they were 6 to 8 months ago. That's a fact. I just bought one myself. One of these deals that I was referring to in Scottsdale that just sold 6 months ago, and the sellers freaked out, and they bought it for $675. They freaked out because they thought the sky was falling and the market's collapsing. So they bought it for $675. They sold it to me for $605. And I mean, that right there is, what is that? So, and they had more money into the house too, because they actually did a little bit of work to the place. But my point here is that I bought that house at like a 12% discount from 6 months ago. And there's other homes in my area right now that are selling at a discount as high as 20% lower than they would have sold for 6 months ago. So from my perspective, there's already a crash or a correction that has happened in some markets at least. And I think that it's possible that that continues based on the fact that we know interest rates are going to keep going up. So could we see an additional 10 or 15 or 20% drop from here? Yes, maybe. But I think that would be a very severe set of circumstances. If we're already down as much as 20% from the peak, how much lower can we go? If you go back to 2008, my market was one of the markets that was hit worse than any other market in the country. And the worst parts of my market saw a drop of like 50% in value. And so if I look at the worst financial crisis we've ever seen, one that specifically was bad for housing, that was fueled by bad subprime loans and everything else, having a drop of 50% in the worst parts of town, and I'm already seeing a drop of 20% in the good parts of town out here, that just tells me that we've already fallen a substantial amount, and that we may not be at the bottom, but in my opinion, we're probably close. And so that's my ramble about the state of the market. The reality is no one knows. I said that in the beginning. I don't know. Stefan doesn't know. No one on this call knows. No one has a crystal ball. No one knows what the future holds. You know, we could very likely bottom next month and then start somehow just skyrocketing back up like we were just 8 months ago. I shouldn't say very likely. That's probably not going to happen. But, you know, it's just a matter. There's so many things at play that determine the direction of the market, and inventory is a big driver of that. And so regarding inventory in my area, I know that we still have an inventory issue. I think that's something that's important to pay attention to. If there's not enough houses for all the people who are moving to your area, then that's a problem. And that's something that should give your housing prices some stability. So I don't know. That's just kind of my ramble. It probably didn't answer your question, but my opinion is mixed on it. I only get frustrated by the people who act like they do know, because no one really knows for sure.
Okay, so Ryan is asking, so when it comes to forming a team of investors, where did you look? I guess like friends and family?
Yeah, you're probably referring to that bigger deal, I would guess, because that's where I brought up bringing a team together of investors. And yes, I mean, friends, family, acquaintances, real estate agents, contractors. Two of my investors on this deal were contractors who I knew who were also investors. one of them happened to be the general contractor who did all this work on this house, invested in this deal with me. So that was, what I learned pretty early on is you just need to start asking, telling everybody what you're doing, and putting together a really polished business plan and showing these potential investors why you have such conviction in a deal, and making sure that that conviction is warranted. Because like on this deal in particular, I'll tell you, on the topic of raising money from friends, family, acquaintances, contractors, agents, whoever, it is super scary to put other people's money on the line. Like, there's not much that keeps me up at night, but when I was going through this deal, knowing that I had close to $2 million on the line, most of that which was other people's money, I had some sleepless nights as we approached the finish line, because I was so afraid of losing those people's money. And so I think that you need to be extremely careful. Even though I went into this deal, like I told you guys before, with so much confidence in the neighborhood, in this exact lot, in the views, in it checking all the boxes in terms of what a high-end buyer would be looking for, I still was nervous putting other people's money on the line. So just be careful with it, and make sure that if you are doing that, that you're really, really careful, and you're crossing all your T's and dotting all your I's, just to be sure that you don't lose their money. Because if it ends up being a smashing success like this project ended up being, then those same people are going to give you more money again on your next deal, because you made them so much money on the last one.
Mm-hmm. And so when you actually mentioned, I know you mentioned staging before, and like, so some like the furniture setups, and I know like it's like you stress on hiring designers, and that's a great point, and like it just makes the flip better and more smoother and more professional and so forth. But in terms of when you spoke of furniture, that's just staging furniture, right? Or are you selling some of those with that?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, if you look at like this one, for example, this is a weird like fisheye lens type of a shot. So it makes the room look kind of weird, and it makes that couch look really small. But yeah, like the staging, the furniture, like this is one of my earlier projects, actually. I'm not super proud of this staging job, but I just think that it's so important to stage a home. You can pull up the statistics online. A staged home, I'll just rattle them off to give you a ballpark, but the gist of it is a staged home sells faster and for more money than a non-staged home. And that's been proven through a lot of different studies. I don't know if it's weeks faster and for 10% more, or what the exact stats are, but staged homes definitely sell faster and for more money. So by putting in some furniture, putting in some art on the walls, putting in little plants on the bar like you see over here, and just making it feel a little bit more warm and cozy, and making it feel like a place that someone could actually live, makes a big difference. Because if a buyer can picture actually living in that house, then they're going to be much more likely to write an offer on that house. And so that's what I meant by staging. I have sold houses with furniture, like this one, for example. Actually, now that I think about it, all the Airbnb properties that I sold furnished, because Airbnb investors don't want to go through the headache of having to furnish a house. It's a huge pain to have to buy all that furniture and put all of it together and put all the forks and knives away and all that stuff. So I've sold some homes furnished, but generally speaking, I only pay to have a stager bring in all the furniture, and then leave it there while I get all the photos taken, while the realtor does all their marketing. And I like to try to keep the furniture in there until it sells, which costs money, unfortunately. Usually, it'll cost you probably $5,000 to $15,000 to stage a house. And that usually only lasts for a few months. And then if you exceed those few months, then you need to start paying the staging company like $500 per month to keep the furniture. And so it's expensive. But I mean, again, these are just the types of things I think that set apart the investors and developers who are really successful time and time again, versus the ones who try to cut corners and end up getting burned.
Actually, so Diego added a great point on the chat, straight out of Google. So staged homes sell 73% faster and for an average of 10% more, just according to Google. I don't know.
Sweet. Thank you, Diego.
Mhm.
So there you go. So I knew it was somewhere along those lines. I mean, I did a lot of studies on the topic myself when I first got started. I tried to understand this business inside and out. I wanted to know every little nook and cranny and nuance and make sure that I was doing things right. And I studied a lot of the successful developers in my area and what was selling homes. What the big production home builders were doing. They staged their properties. If you guys have been to any big tract home community and go to some of their model homes, they're full of furniture. They're nice and warm and cozy. And so I try to kind of model what they were doing. And I mean, it's worked for me. I'm not saying that my recipe is perfect, but it's worked for me so far. And I just plan to continue at this, with this trajectory, because it gives you a lot of pride too. As you guys may have noticed, my initial work that I'd done, I was not necessarily super proud of because I was just learning the ropes. But my newer projects, whether they might not be for everybody, but they're projects that I'm really proud of myself. And I just love to be able to have projects that I'm proud of and be able to hand over these homes to people who I know are really going to love them and enjoy them. So I mean, the staging, they don't necessarily take the furniture with them, but that first impression is huge. If they love the place when they walk into it for the first time, then they're going to probably keep thinking about it later that night and the next day, and hopefully you'll get an offer.
Right. Do you wanna? So I mean, you do a lot of YouTube. Like I'm signed up to your channel myself. So do you want to show us your YouTube channel quick before?
Yeah, sure. I don't know. Let's see if I can figure out how to share that screen instead. So,
Okay.
yeah, I don't know if anyone here is interested in. Oh, screen sharing stopped. Okay. I don't know if anyone here is interested in my YouTube story, but I can just share my screen and then tell you a little bit about that for fun. So this is kind of, okay, can you see that now?
Yeah, that's perfect.
This is where all my crazy faces come from. I have to take all these faces for these thumbnails. So I started a YouTube channel about maybe 2.5 years ago. I did it because I wanted to start sharing my real estate investing experience with the world and talk more about my house flips and take people on little tours of my house flips and stuff like that. And as I continue to put videos out, I started covering some real estate related news, which is what you can see in some of these titles and thumbnails. And I got a lot of traction and a lot of views on those videos I was doing about basically interesting real estate topics that were happening all over the world. And so I still do videos about my own house flipping business, like this one. I'm building a $2 million house in a recession, or $800,000 profit to be made on this house flip. Spoiler alert, there's not $800,000 worth of profit to be made on this house, but that's just part of the game. You've got to put these kind of click-worthy titles up. And then I do other stories, like there's a $250 million penthouse that just listed in New York City on Billionaires Row. The realtor says you can see the curvature of the earth from the balcony. So I do basically real estate related videos that you guys are welcome to follow me if you're interested in any of this stuff. I have a lot of fun with it. That's why I've got this fancy studio and all this lighting that you see behind me, just because I put out a lot of real estate stuff. And through this, really, ultimately, my goal was to try to help people learn how to flip houses. Because when I got started myself, I didn't really have a whole lot of support. There's a website I love called biggerpockets.com. It's like a forum /podcast/ blog website. And I learned a lot from Bigger Pockets. But otherwise, I didn't have much in the way of like a mentor or someone that I could follow and learn from. So I started just putting these videos out to help people out. And along with these videos, I'm putting together, like I said in the beginning, kind of like a little education platform where I'm going to do some coaching calls, and I'm doing a real estate investing course that just kind of tells you about how to get started in real estate investing if you're interested in flipping houses or buying rentals or whatever. But that's kind of what this is all about. It's turned into like a passion project for me. It's a business that I take very seriously. This is a stream of income for me at this point. So I put videos out every Monday, every Friday, 3:30 p.m. without skipping a beat. But it's also something I have a lot of fun with. Like, I feel like it's another creative outlet for me, just like the house flips are. The YouTube channel has kind of become that too. So anyways, there's that.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Okay. And what is the best way for people to reach to you?
Well, let's see. You can find me on YouTube here, Scott Edward. You can find me on Instagram, which is Scott Edward Real Estate. And I post little real estate tips every day there, just like little 20-second videos with random real estate tips from questions I've been asked. You can email me. I can put that in the chat. It's Scott Edward LLC at Gmail. No, you know what? Don't email me. I don't know what my email is right now. Oh yeah, Scott Edward LLC at gmail.com. I've got too many emails. I have a few different email addresses for different businesses. Scott Edward LLC at gmail.com. You can email me there. I'd be happy to talk real estate or help you out with any of your real estate related questions that you've got. If you want to book a call like this over Zoom, I can send you the link for that. Yeah, that's how you can reach me.
You've got
and I'm usually on these calls too, so you'll probably see me here again.
You've got a website too, right, Scott?
Yeah, I do. ScottEdwardRealEstate.com.
Okay,
you can find a lot of information about my story, more photos of the projects that we went through today. So you can, that's just kind of my whole bio. That website is built out sort of as a platform for my education business that I'm building. So it's kind of funny. And I don't know how many people on this call have followed any of the other real estate investing, like kind of gurus out there. And I know some of the gurus get a bad name, the people who are trying to sell courses and coachings and stuff like that. So I'm really trying to take a more transparent approach with all of it, because the truth is, like, I really do want to help people. I enjoy just talking about real estate. My wife's sick of talking about real estate, so I need to talk about it with other people. And I love helping people out with achieving their real estate investing goals. And so that's what it's all about. Like I shared today, a lot of the details about the profits and how I run my business is because, like, I've got no secrets, nothing to hide, no smoke and mirrors, no like crazy voodoo investing strategy. Some people are like, you have to wholesale, or you have to do subject to, or seller financing, or like all these abstract strategies. And the way I look at it is, people have been making money in real estate for a century by just simply buying real estate in good locations and either holding on to it forever or adding value through renovations and then selling it later for a profit. So to me, it's like, that's the only way anyone should be investing in real estate. Forget about all these other crazy strategies. Just stick to what's tried and true.
And so your course, is it available right now? So like Ryan is asking, like your real estate course, or like perhaps in the future, like have a set date or.
It's very funny timing, and thanks for asking, Ryan. I did not plan on plugging this because I didn't want to turn this into a sales pitch out of respect for Stefan. But believe it or not, I just finished filming it. Like, I think last week, like last Tuesday, I finally finished filming it. So I have yet to publish the entire website. I'm still working out the kinks with like the checkout page and everything, but all the lessons are filmed and uploaded. I just have a few bugs to work out. So if you are interested in that, my plan is to do a few weeks worth of like launch pricing. So there's going to be a huge discount for the first few weeks that I make it available. And then after that, it'll go up to the full price. So if you do want to be on the list for that launch pricing, just send me an email and I'll get you the information for that. Because I'd hate for you to have to pay full price.
Okay, that was awesome. Thanks so much for sharing your knowledge today. It was a lot of fun and very educational as well. So thanks to everyone for joining here. It's going to be on YouTube tomorrow, so make sure to check us out there and have a good night.
Bye, guys. Thanks, Stefan.
Thank you, Stefan.
Thanks.